Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Black heart, black mind, black in. Again, hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. I want to start off by giving a shout out to South African MGTOW. He's currently the only one addressing red pill issues in South Africa. And there's a reason I mention him and what he's doing. Back in 2017, I saw a video of two original South Africans. And when I say original, I mean black South Africans. That's how I differentiate them. They were there first. Two black South Africans. I'm not sure if they were Xhosa or Zulu, Swati, Tswana, Venda. I don't know, because they were arguing in English. But the lady was saying that the men had become soft and lazy, and that all they wanted to do was drink beer and chase yellow bones, which is their term for light-skinned people, and that was it. And I said to myself, that sounds a lot like Black America, at least the uneducated portions of Black America. And so I listened, and I later learned that these complaints were pretty much invalid in the States. So how the hell did they make their way to South Africa? Well, from some South African colleagues of mine, I learned that a militant strain of feminism was taking hold there. And then I began to see that there was this thought culture on a Twitter post where a lady said, from South Africa, when did you realize that you were a hoe? And these other ladies chimed in and told all these things that they had done that were really low down, whorish, and disrespectful to their main men with their side dudes or side men. The whole thought, cheat on a good man culture had made its way into at least Johannesburg, where a lot of them said they were, I think. I don't remember how I came to the conclusion that they were in Johannesburg, but South African MGTOW pulled my coattail and said, anything bad that is going on in the States is also going on in Joburg. Gentlemen, let me explain something. This has something to do with the gender wars that we're talking about stateside. BGS said it's over. Angry Man said, hell no, it's not over. I know why both of them said it. BGS said the objective was reached. Angry Man said, they're still a threat. They're not harmless. I know why both of them said it. What that means to me is that the battle, a particular battle, is over, the war is not. And I side with Angry Man when talking about the war as a whole. To me, it's not over until they get locked in mental hospitals for even talking this feminist stuff, especially if they're still hypergamous. Especially if they single out black men as a boogeyman. That it puts them in the bowels of mental hospitals where they'll probably be forgotten and certainly never out and functional and taken seriously ever again. That's what I'm looking for. The same way out until what happens to them matches exactly what has happened to original pro-black movements, where they just got disbanded and everything bad happened to them. It ain't over. Period. This being said, I want to straight up make this case. I want this to be understood. I know it's not over because it's going to South Africa. That right there tells me everything. It's not over if it's spreading. If what they're saying is spreading, and what we're saying has to spread by necessity because what they're saying is spreading. We don't advocate rape. We don't advocate violence against women. Yet many of us are told to feel some sort of guilt because of these things happening, when in fact we can be outraged and disgusted by them because they're wrong, but we are not to feel guilty when most of us haven't done it. Guilt is for the offender. not others of the same demographic. And I say this when it comes to women. You don't hear me sitting up and saying to women, well, you should feel guilty because another woman took this man over here to the cleaners and made him not see his kids anymore, but he's always on the hook for child support. You should feel guilty for that. I don't say things like that. Whereas the difference between men and women is exactly what Game Changer and Jessica X talked about on one of their live streams. I think it was on his channel. Shout out to you, Game Changer. Shout out to you, Mrs. X. You know what she said and what he said? She said, no, mothers and aunts and grandmothers are not going to sit up here and tell these young boys about the games that women play. They're not going to do that because they could be telling on themselves. And Game Changer said therein lies the difference, because we as fathers are going to tell our daughters and our nieces and our granddaughters games that men may play to watch out for them. We're not willing to help out the guilty men, especially at the expense of our own blood, whereas she, the adult, is willing to help out guilty women at the expense of her own son, nephew, grandson, younger brother, you name it, in order to protect herself. That's real. And so now, that's why I am one-sided, as I've said before, and I'm going to remain one-sided until more and more ladies come out and they're two-sided. I'm just not willing to blame the innocent for what the guilty have done. That's all. Man or woman. I'm not willing to go and strike women to get them in line. I'm also not willing to be hit and let them get away with it. Fortunately, that's not a problem in my life, but what about the rest of you men? How many of you can sit up and say you have the option to be with a woman that's not going to hit you and that you're not going to have to hit to protect yourself? How many of you have the option to say, you can just decide I'm going to be in a relationship with a woman that I find attractive and we're not going to hit each other? You don't get that option. You don't get to just decide that and then go out and do it. For women, that's a decision. And we've made that decision too easy for them in many cases. For what reason? We don't know their games. We didn't start off early enough in life knowing their games. They started off too early in life knowing games we didn't even have. Hearing about these games from dad and uncle and granddad and older brother before they reached the age at which the boys would even know these games, and then they realize, wait a minute, so I know these games to play for mama, but the games that men are going to play, these boys here I'm in school with don't know yet because we too young. Oh, hell, I'm finna clean house, especially if I grow some titties and ass. Oh, hell yeah. That's what the hell happens. And that's why I keep saying to men, gentlemen, don't make it too easy. That's why I keep telling them this. But the war can't be over if that radical, militant, anti-black misandrist feminism is spreading to our homeland. I know. Some of you say, we don't come from Africa. Yeah, well, I mean, you can think that. I only beef with people who start beefing with Africans because they're African and then turn around and excuse and exonerate white folks. But so I'm not beefing with y'all for saying it, but I'm not saying that. So if you believe that that's the case, we ain't never going to agree. We came from Africa. Some of you say, well, black, you mixed. You need to stop even calling yourself black. Yes, nigga, I'm mixed. Mandingo, Hausa, Fulani. Yes, I'm mixed. Hell, I'm even mixed between tribes that didn't like each other back home, like Yoruba and Igbo, like Hausa and Igbo, as an example. So yeah, I'm mixed, just like you're mixed. So it's not over, and that's why I say it. I'm not saying out of disrespect to BGS. We get along fine. I think it's not over. I think to a certain extent, Angry Man is right that the threat still exists. And if there's a lull in the hostilities, then there's a lull. It's going to pick up again. They're too well funded to quit. They're too well backed to quit. What will change some things is when we leave. And Danielle Georgie, I think her last name is George, Danielle is the one that said it. Black women ain't gonna change till you niggas start leaving. She didn't realize how many were already leaving, but it ain't reached no critical mass yet. And this brings me to another point. The based Pluto and Marshawn Israel are in a debate. And they may debate on Pluto's channel or not. It's up to Marshawn Israel. Now, what I'm going to say is this. Both of them have brought some links to back up what they say. Marshawn brought some links that were published in 2013. They were published in 2013 from studies. And what I found was that the studies were largely done with one dating site, which is OkCupid. OkCupid did the study. So this is one dating site. Now, it was peer-reviewed. It may have been peer-reviewed. If it was reviewed, that's fine, but it's one dating site. So it does show patterns. It doesn't show as many details to the patterns as what will be shown if more and more dating sites get into this. So, he brought receipts for what he said. Pluto brought some receipts for what he said. The difference is this. The receipts that Marshawn brought gave more detail because they were coming from one site. And they were from 2013. Now, I myself have noticed a shift between 2013 and today. I mean, we're well past halfway at this point. We now have less than 90 days in 2020. So we're about to come up. We've passed up 7 years from that study, and there's been a lot that's changed. And new studies are going to show more details. Well, Pluto came out with studies, I forgot exactly what they all were, but they were more recent, and they showed a bit more. Now, there was another one that showed there was another one that Marshawn Israel showed that corrected a lot of these myths about black marriage. Rappers, they're looking for the mixed and exotic and anything but black women. Rappers, maybe. Athletes. But that in actuality, most black men who earned $100,000 or more and got married still married black women. I never disputed that. So Marshawn's not making these things up, and neither is Pluto. The thing is that things are changing. That's what it is. What Marshawn saw is changing and has been changing from that time. 2013, hell, was there was this radical anti-black misandrist feminism really taking hold in South Africa like it is in 2013? Would O'Shea Duke Jackson, shout out to him, have found the same entitlement that he's finding among some of the women in Uganda? Would he have found this? Not sure, but I don't think it would have been the same. It's not over because it's not getting any better. It's always, every time we look up, getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And we have every right to be angry and offended. It's not because every man is a saint. It's because the men who are not guilty are still expected to suffer. It's okay for her to have her walls up, and that's even when you're just working with them. That's okay, but it is not okay for you to have your walls up no matter what any woman did to you. I'll never forget once when my mother, I was a teen, she walked up, she was mad about something. She walked up, put her finger in my face, and I ducked because I thought she was going to strike me. She said, "What are you doing?" And I said, I flinched because I thought you were going to hit me. And she said, "If I'm going to hit you, you sit still and take it." Now, this is a mother talking to her son, and she thought I was in the wrong about something. I'd probably say the same to my kids. You better not duck the punishment when you've earned it. You run, I'm going to whoop your ass twice. But the point is, in her mind, that's what it is. But the thing was that you may expect this from a mom when she's correcting you when you're a minor, but what I saw was a similar attitude without provocation when I got out into the wider world. I'll never forget this coworker I had. I mentioned him before. Mixed cat. You could say he was Blendian. His dad was from the subcontinent. Both of his parents, I think, were from one of the islands. But his dad was from the subcontinent. His mother was black, and he came out with somewhat softer hair, but he had buck teeth too. So he was somewhat goofy looking, and with the buck teeth, but he turned out to actually be goofy. He wasn't mean. He wasn't disrespectful. He was somewhat goofy. But the problem was that he wouldn't bring up the subject of women and dating and how good he was with the ladies. He didn't bring this up unless somebody else did, but the ladies would keep on bringing it up. So his goofy behind would keep on feeding into it, and what wound up happening was that they began to disrespect him very quickly, very shortly after. Right off the bat. Now, some of the guys said, yeah, I'd have whooped his ass in high school, but the guys didn't disrespect him. The women, we were grown. The women did this. We were adults. The women were disrespecting him. Even elder women were doing it. One day, an elderly white woman did it. She was the boss of our team, and she said to him one day out the blue, you are inferior to a strong woman, in front of the other women, and then they were all cracking up laughing except her. And I know because it was one of the male employees that told me that she did this, and he was laughing about it. And I said to him, he does need to be more observant of the differences between genders. He does need to do that, certainly. But you know what? He didn't disrespect or harass any of the women at work. He was smart about that. He wound up getting into a long-distance relationship with one of the elder ladies' nieces up in the Midwest somewhere. We were in Atlanta. So he was in a long-distance relationship, and he quit talking about how good he was with the ladies because he took it seriously, despite it being long distance. Guess what? Of course, the ladies then started to try to befriend him so that they could befriend her. Mind you, long-distance calls were not free back then. So while he's spending money to call long distance to maintain a long-distance relationship, they became friends with him, a little friendlier with him, mostly, or they were already friends with her aunt with whom we worked, the girl's aunt, or the girlfriend's aunt with whom we worked. So they got in touch with the niece, and they started poisoning her ear against him. And so one day I said, is she doing okay up there? And he said, we broke up. And I said, what the hell, man? I mean, okay, but what could you have possibly done wrong from this distance? And he said that she just said she wasn't feeling it. And it's okay, it's her right. I said, yeah, it's her right, of course. But just remember this, it's your right too. You have a right to turn down anybody for any reason. Same right to have with you. Just as long as you remember it goes two ways. And one lady heard me and sucked her teeth and was like, there he go. You see, he was just a regular, somewhat goofball, but he didn't disrespect any women at work. He didn't harass, nothing like that. And this is how he got treated because they didn't want to screw him when they saw him. It's war, and it's still on. It's not that I want this to be that way. I wish that the war had never started. I don't want it. I'm not gay. I don't have an interest in combat with women. And I will say this too. We like to talk as black folks about how bad we are compared to every other race. Everybody else has so much together. That's not true, but there is one distinction, and that is that it is among not African Americans, but among black people more so, increasingly internationally, that we're in a war with the other gender. That is becoming distinct to us. Now, is there feminism in South Korea? Yes, it's changing the culture. That's true. But you know what? It's not quite a war yet. The genders have different interests, but it's not a war. But among black people in the United States, the Caribbean, South Africa, And it seems like one day it'll happen in Uganda too. It's going to become a war because they feel more and more entitled to what they want, and that we deserve less and less and less of anything we might want. That's how they feel. Like, right off the bat, no, nigga, no, no, no. You like this, you should never have it. We want this, no matter how unfair it is, we should get it. That's where wars come in, if you want to call them this. I'm at war with some of my students at this point. Little bastards got together and lied. And some of my good students told me, oh no, these niggas sat up and talked about it and coordinated a lie in the WhatsApp group. They said, let's go and complain to your boss. And I said, okay, I see. Thanks for letting me know. You know why do you know what the reason was? They wanted high marks without studying. Okay, we all do. But they demanded it. They insisted on it. They said we should not be marked absent just because we don't go to class. That's what these little niggas said to each other. But they couldn't say that to my boss, so they lied. Well, he kicks us out because we don't answer correctly in English. No, I kick them niggas out because they don't answer at all when I call them. Because they're logged in, but they're not actually at the phone or the computer. That's why I kick them out. That means they're absent. They just logged in to try to cheat the system because they get paid for it. And I caught them. Now we're at war. These little niggas hit me up on the group that we created. Doctor, what's my grade? Nigga, I don't know. What did I make on the writing test? I don't know. You probably failed. Most of y'all failed because you didn't actually write. Doctor, what did I get on the speaking test? You probably failed that too because most of y'all did, but I don't know. I can't see it. Stop bothering me. Now, C. Boogie was right about something. Real, literal war is different, and it is heartbreaking. He's right. In a real, literal war, you see bodies sawed in half by 50 caliber guns. That's true. They got guns they can shoot and disassemble a car and then set the damn car on fire. That's true. They do have these things. Nonetheless, while they've got them, the fact still remains that it's hard even for the superior armed forces. It's traumatizing. Night terrors. You come back and you're not the same. You can't be the same. You had to sit and see these things. You had to hear grown men not only screaming in another language, but you have to hear grown adult men screaming in your language for their mothers as they're dying. You see some people with injuries wondering, why am I alive to even see this kind of injury on my own body? Because what they don't know is that in a few seconds, this is when death is going to take hold. It's just a little bit delayed. You have to look at some of them and they're delirious because they don't know if they're dead and they're a ghost just looking around or if they're still alive. They can't tell. It takes them a while because you speak to them and they think maybe you're dead. They don't know. That's what goes on. I understand it is much worse than what we're dealing with. But by the same token, what we're dealing with is still as long and as protracted. In other words, they are as determined to undo us and they're as determined to limit us and paint us into unacceptable corners as they would be if this was a war. So it's a Cold War, I get it. But it's a war because what they're pretty much saying is, nigga, we demand from you what is unacceptable to take from you. What is unacceptable for you to give under the terms that it is unacceptable is exactly what we demand. We demand you go through exactly what you find unacceptable and what we would find unacceptable if we were in your shoes. Our interests are the opposite of yours. What's good for you, we want to make sure you never get. What's bad for you, we want to force feed you. And we would never tolerate you doing this to us, and we will punish you further if we can, just for trying to defend yourselves and evade these unacceptable terms we're trying to force on you. That's why. That's why I see it as a type of war. Kendra D even said it. They demand to get from you things that they don't deserve and don't earn, and they want to make sure that you never have anything you like just because you like it. They would refuse to do anything for you that you like because you like it. They can't stand that. They look down on those who do it. That is war. The pick-me's and the pick-meshas that don't mean you any harm, that would like to have a good future with a good man at some point, which is normal and natural, are being picked on by the others because they're not harsh enough against you, against me. They want to be fair. They don't want to blame us for things we didn't do. They don't want to criminalize heterosexual male sexuality. They don't want to criminalize these things. They don't want to cheat on you, then turn around and take everything away from you as if you're the one who cheated. They don't want to do these things. They don't want to keep you out of your children's lives and then turn around and take your resources for it. And other women hate them for these things. They are hated by other women for the bad and nasty, unacceptable things that they don't want to do to you. That's war. And it ain't over. We just wish it was. It speaks volumes to me that BGS would be willing to consider that it is. It means to me that he's not just looking for a war, but they're not looking to stop it. And it is a war for two things. It is not even really a war for your DNA unless you're not ready to reproduce at that point. Now, if you're not ready, then it might be. But other than that, no, it's not a war for that. It's actually a war to genetically eliminate most of you, but financially bind most of you. And then use those finances to further the DNA of those few that they actually want to see reproduce and have kids. That's what it is. It is a war to turn most of you men into exactly what they don't want and have a contempt for. And you won't be able to satisfy that, because if they eliminate whatever percentage they want to eliminate of us from this generation, the offspring that do make it to the next generation will face the same thing. If they're eliminating 87% of us, maybe it's not that much. It's just according to some dating site, that's what it seemed to be. Some even said 93%. Point is, if they eliminate whatever percent, then the offspring of the men they don't eliminate, the male offspring of the men they don't eliminate, are going to go through a similar elimination process, even if none of those male children had fathers that women consider to be genetically inferior and repulsive, sexually repulsive. If none of those men had children, guess what? Doesn't matter. If it wasn't but the most muscular and richest and tallest 7% of males in any society that had children with most of the women, you know what would happen? Those women, the next generation's daughters would eliminate the majority of the next generation's sons. End of story. South African MGTOW pointed that out, and you can check that out too. He said it, and it's true. The Chad of 2020 will not be the Chad of 2030. If you can go to the gym and be in shape and be selected this generation, then those are the only men that have children. Guess what? Those sons of those men will have to be bodybuilders. They have to look like professional bodybuilders. They can't have the basketball player build. They will have to be. They will have to all look like The Rock. No basketball players. No jujitsus. No jujitsu type builds, or nobody looking like Bruce Lee. None of that. No, you gotta be extra tall and extra big and muscular. Has to be. And that's all they're gonna want. That's all. The point I'm making is that the elimination of the majority is not going to stop until they come to understand, until they face the harsh reality that it's going to put them in exactly the situations they can't stand, old and alone. And most of them can never learn that, because you know what? When they're young, they have too many options, and we make them too easy. So that being said, I hope that one day what I've said will no longer be true and no longer be necessary. In the meantime, I hope it helps. But it ain't over. Black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual, even non-select and incel male power just because she don't like it.